They tell you that monsters are just fairy tales. They tell you that the things hiding under your bed or lurking in the darkest, forgotten corners of your closet are nothing more than the overactive imagination of a child. They're lying. The worst monsters in this universe aren't born from hellfire or summoned by occult magic. They are the ones we create ourselves, born from innocent childhood games, fueled by our own fears, and abandoned in the dark to rot. I know this to be a terrifying, undeniable fact, because a silly, ancient midsummer myth didn't just ruin my life. It forced me to create the very demon that has hunted me since I was a boy. If you're listening to this, I need you to understand. Some traditions should be left to die in the past. If you ever find yourself in the woods on Midsummer's Eve, keep your head down. Keep your hands in your pockets, and for the love of God, do not pick the flowers. To understand my nightmare, you need to understand the tradition. In the Nordic countries, midsummer isn't just a date on the calendar, it's an ancient, borderline mystical event. It's the longest day of the year, a time when the sun refuses to fully set. Instead of night, you get this eerie, unending twilight, a silver, liminal hour where the world of the living and the world of spirits supposedly blur together. The legend we were all taught as children says that if you wander into this twilight and pick 7 different wildflowers in absolute, unbroken silence, then place them beneath your pillow, you will dream of your true love, your soulmate. It sounds like a beautiful fairy tale, but for me, it was a death sentence. I was only 7 years old when the horror began. We were spending the summer at my grandmother's cabin in the deep, isolated forests of Dalarna, Sweden. My 2 older sisters, cruel and mocking in the way only older siblings can be, decided I was going to be their entertainment for the evening. "Go on, little man," my eldest sister Freya taunted, shoving me hard in the back toward the tree line. The tall grass swallowed my knees. "Let's see who you're going to marry. If you speak a single word, the trolls will eat your tongue." I was terrified. The woods at that hour looked wrong. The trees cast long, stretching shadows that seemed to reach for my ankles, but the fear of my sister's mockery was stronger than my fear of the dark, so I obeyed. I wandered into the damp, mosquito-infested woods, my small hands trembling as I snapped the stems of 6 random flowers: bluebells, wild chamomile, clover. Then, I saw the 7th. It was growing alone at the base of a rotting oak tree, a black-eyed Susan. It stood out aggressively from the pastel colors of the other wildflowers. Its golden petals were slightly wilted, but its center, the dark, bulbous dome, drew my eye. In the fading, silvery light of the midnight sun, it looked less like a flower and more like a dead, unblinking black pupil staring directly into my soul. A deep chill ran down my spine, but I plucked it anyway, terrified of breaking the silence. That night, I bundled the 7 flowers together, the sweet smell of pollen mixing with the metallic tang of damp earth, and shoved them beneath my pillow. I squeezed my eyes shut, expecting a dream of a pretty girl from my school. Instead, the nightmare swallowed me whole. I didn't dream of a beautiful bride. I dreamt I was standing in a pitch-black void. The air was freezing, thick with the suffocating stench of decaying earth, rusted iron, and rotting meat. Out of the darkness it crawled. It was a shadowy, twisting mass of rot, exposed bone, and long, weeping black hair. It dragged itself across the invisible floor, its limbs cracking and popping with a sickening snap-crunch sound. It had no face, only a gaping maw and those long, skeletal fingers. It crawled up my bed in the dream, its unbearable weight crushing my chest, suffocating me.
I woke up screaming so hard I tasted blood in the back of my throat. I was thrashing against the bedsheets, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. My grandmother ran in, throwing the flowers out the window, muttering prayers. 10 years passed. I grew up. I convinced myself it was just a vivid child's nightmare brought on by my sister's bullying. But at 17, fueled by the foolish, invincible bravado of a teenager, I attended a midsummer party with some friends. There was drinking, laughing, and eventually, the girls started talking about the flower ritual. The old memory prickled at the back of my mind. I wanted to prove to myself that I wasn't that scared little 7-year-old anymore. I decided to test the myth one more time. I walked into the woods alone. I found the 7 flowers. I made sure, with a morbid sense of irony, that the seventh was a black-eyed Susan, and I went to sleep. The dream began peacefully enough. I was standing in a meadow, but within seconds, the sky bled into a bruised, sickly purple. The grass beneath my feet died, turning to gray ash, and then the temperature plummeted. It appeared. It was taller now, a towering, gaunt entity draped in shadows that looked like rotting, tattered bridal silk. Its limbs were far too long, moving with unnatural, jerking motions, like a marionette controlled by a drunk puppeteer. As it dragged itself toward me, a voice scraped inside my skull. It wasn't a sound you hear with your ears. It was a vibration in my teeth, a sound like grinding tombstones and rusted metal. "My love," it whispered, the voice dripping with centuries of malice and sorrow. I tried to run, but my feet were glued to the ash. It lunged, its cold, iron-like fingers wrapped violently around my left leg, just below the knee. Through the veil of weeping black hair, it smiled, a jagged, horrific smile full of broken teeth, and it twisted its hands. The sickening, wet crunch of my bones snapping echoed endlessly in the dream. I snapped awake in my bedroom, screaming in genuine, blinding agony. My parents rushed in, flipping on the lights to find me convulsing on the mattress, my left leg bent at an impossible, grotesque angle. The hospital trip was a blur of morphine and panicked voices. The orthopedic surgeon looked at my x-rays with a pale, confused face. He said the tibia and fibula weren't just broken, they were pulverized. It was a spiral fracture that required immense, localized torque. Like a thick, wet towel being wrung out by a machine, he had whispered to my mother. They called it a freak sleepwalking accident, assuming I had tumbled down the staircase and caught my leg in the banister. But I knew the truth. I saw the bruises on my skin before they put the cast on. They were in the exact shape of long, skeletal fingers overlapping my calf. Years later, when I was 25, I met Lilia. She was sunlight incarnate, warm, brilliant, with a laugh that could disarm a bomb and a soul of endless patience. We met at a small bookstore where she worked, and I fell deeply, irretrievably in love. She was my anchor, but the shadow of the black-eyed Susan always loomed over me. As midsummer approached each year, my trauma would physically manifest. I would suffer brutal night terrors. I grew paranoid, checking the locks a dozen times a night, jumping at shadows in our apartment, refusing to sleep if the closet door was even a millimeter ajar. I lost weight. I looked like a ghost. Lilia cornered me one evening in late June, holding my trembling hands on our living room couch. "Talk to me," she begged, her green eyes full of tears. "Please, what are you so afraid of? You're fading away. Let me help you carry this."
I couldn't just tell her. How do you look at the woman you love and say, "A dream monster wants to marry me, and it shatters my bones when I sleep"? It sounded like pure, unadulterated madness. I was terrified she would commit me to a psychiatric ward. In a moment of desperate, catastrophic stupidity, I decided I had to show her. If I did the ritual, if I could just capture the entity on my bedside camera or show her the physical marks, she would believe me. I gathered the flowers. I performed the ritual again. But I broke the unspoken rules. I didn't do it in silence. I did it out of defiance. I provoked it. The entity didn't stay in my dreams this time. It realized the door between our worlds had been left cracked open, and it forced its way through. It began bleeding into our waking reality. At first, it was subtle. The temperature in our apartment would randomly drop so low we could see our breath. We smelled rotting flower petals in the kitchen. Then the shadows started moving. Lilia would wake up to find a trail of dead, black soil leading from our locked front door directly to my side of the bed. We began hearing the grinding whispers in the walls at night, that horrible metallic voice calling out, "Where are you, my love?" It culminated one night when Lilia went to the kitchen for a glass of water. I heard a glass shatter, followed by a blood-curdling scream. I ran in to find her backed into a corner, sobbing, pointing at the window. Standing under the street lamp outside, looking up at our third-floor apartment, was the towering, emaciated silhouette. It was hunting us, and it was furious that Lilia was in the picture. "We have to end this," Lilia said a week later. She was pale, sleep-deprived, but her voice was shaking with resolute bravery. We were huddled in our living room on Midsummer's Eve, the air thick with tension. We can't live like this, running from a ghost. If this thing is tied to the ritual, if it's tied to that dreamscape, we go in together. We do the ritual, we go into its domain, and we find a way to kill it. I didn't want to. God, I wanted to run away to the other side of the planet, but we had no choice. It was going to kill her if we didn't. We picked the 7 flowers together, we placed them beneath our pillows, laid down side by side, held hands so tightly our knuckles turned white, and closed our eyes. When we awoke, the first thing I noticed was the sky. It was the color of dead ash and bruised purple. The ground beneath us was barren, a vast expanse of great darts stretching endlessly in all directions. The air was dead, devoid of wind or sound. I looked down at my hands to brace myself, and I gasped. They were small, plump. The scars on my knuckles from my teenage years were gone. I was wearing the little red sweater my grandmother had knitted for me. I looked over at Lilia. She was swimming in an oversized yellow dress. We weren't adults anymore. The dreamscape had stripped us of our age, our defenses, our adult logic. We were 7 years old again. "Where are we?" Lilia whispered, her childhood voice trembling with a raw, primal fear. She clutched my little hand. "In its domain," I replied, scanning the dead horizon for any sign of the towering monster, but there was nothing. No entity, no shadows, just emptiness. Then I saw it. About 20 feet away, growing amidst the desolate gray ash, was a single pop of color. A flower, a black-eyed Susan. Its golden petals were pristine, and its black center seemed to pulse like a beating heart. A strange, heavy, hypnotic compulsion washed over my mind. The fear vanished, replaced by an overwhelming robotic need to complete a task. My mind went entirely blank, enveloped in a thick fog. I let go of Lilia's hand. I walked over to the solitary flower, my small boots kicking up clouds of ash. I plucked it from the dead earth. I turned back to little Flea, who was watching me with wide, terrified eyes.
"Here," I said, extending my hand, offering her the flower. My voice sounded hollow, like someone else was speaking through me. Hesitantly, Lilia reached out. The absolute moment her small, delicate fingers brushed the stem of the black-eyed Susan, the world violently tore apart. It was as if someone had dropped a bomb inside my eardrums. The ash sky shattered like a pane of glass, raining down shards of black static. A deafening, blood-curdling scream ripped through the air. Lilia's scream, full of absolute agony and betrayal. "No, don't leave me!" I tried to grab her, but I was suddenly yanked backward by an invisible gravitational force. I was dragged through a vortex of agonizing noise, flashing lights, and suffocating darkness. I felt my body being compressed, torn apart, and put back together. Gasp. My eyes flew open, stinging. Water splashed heavily over the sides of a porcelain tub, spilling onto the tile floor. I was sitting in lukewarm water. The air was humid and smelled heavily of synthetic strawberry bubble bath. I was hyperventilating, staring blankly at the tiled wall. Slowly, mechanically, I turned my head to look in the mirror above the sink. A 7-year-old boy, dripping wet, stared back at me. "Hurry up in there," a voice suddenly shouted. It echoed from the hallway, muffled through the bathroom door. My blood turned to absolute ice. It was my sister, Freya, but not the adult Freya. It was her teenage voice. "Get out of the tub. We need to go out to the woods and pick the flowers before the sun sets." No, 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 no. I couldn't breathe. My throat closed up. My mind raced frantically, piecing together a puzzle so horrific, so infinitely cruel, that it made my stomach heave violently. I gripped the edges of the tub, my knuckles white. I wasn't just having a flashback. I had been sent back. The ritual, the flower, giving it to Lilia in that domain. It had reset the timeline, but only for me. The broken leg at 17, the monstrous entity, the tattered bridal silk, the grinding metallic voice echoing in my mind. "My love, I have waited so long for you." I dropped to my knees on the wet, fuzzy bath mat, sobbing uncontrollably into my tiny hands. The realization crushed me like a physical weight. Lilia hadn't just been left behind in that wasteland. Time didn't exist in that dimension the way it does here in the real world. A day here could be 1,000 years there. She was trapped in that dark, dying dimension, alone, a 7-year-old girl, abandoned in the gray ash.
For decades, for centuries, for untold eons, driven utterly, irrevocably mad by the isolation, the freezing darkness, and the ultimate betrayal of the boy she trusted. I imagined her crying until her voice gave out. I imagined her waiting for me to come back. And when I didn't, I imagined her rotting away in the ash, mutating, twisting into something unrecognizable. Her love turning into a festering, bottomless hatred. Her humanity stripping away over millennia until nothing was left but a towering, shadowy mass of rot, bone, and weeping hair. The monster that had haunted my childhood. The entity that shattered my leg because it wanted to keep me from running away. The nightmare that haunted us in our apartment are of pure, jealous rage. It was never a demon. It was never a troll from Nordic folklore. It was Lilia, and I had just condemned her to become it. I am trapped in a loop of my own creation, and tonight, my sisters are going to push me into the woods, and I will pick the black-eyed Susan, and the nightmare will begin all over again. Have you ever participated in an innocent childhood ritual, a silly game in the dark, or an old local myth that felt wrong? Or have you ever experienced a recurring nightmare that felt just a little too real, as if something was trying to bleed into your waking world?
Drop your stories in the comments below. I read every single one of them, and who knows, your experience might just be featured in our next deep dive into the unknown. If this tragic, terrifying tale of the black-eyed Susan time loop kept you on the edge of your seat, hit that like button right now to appease the algorithm. Share this video with your friends to warn them about the dark side of midsummer folklore, and make sure you subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another nightmare. Until next time, my friends, keep your lights on, lock your doors, and be very, very careful what you dream of tonight.